Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for coming to the side event. We know it's a very busy session for everybody, so we appreciate that everyone took out the time to attend the side event. My name is Pooja, and I will be the moderator for this event. Just a technical announcement, please do not take pictures out of security issues. My colleague sitting in the front with the camera will be the only one who will be allowed to take pictures. So we thank you for not doing the same. So as we've heard repeatedly through this session that we have limited and strict time limits, so I'll be brief so we can get on to our wonderful speakers. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted that we are living in an increasingly connected world, socially and economically. It highlighted the cracks in the global order, and it also highlighted how we cannot live in isolation, in reality or in how we perceive the world. This is not a new idea. Social movements particularly have highlighted for decades. We saw more of this when it came to discussions around vaccine supply chains and essential products. The global economic order and the global human rights standards seemed two distinct entities without talking to each other or even understanding each other. Here in the Human Rights Council, we hear repeatedly the essential aspects of the human condition is not for the council or for human rights. Sometimes they're technical and the other times they're irrelevant. However, we know that all our lives are not quite as distinct and separate. Our sexuality and its expression is as much linked to the right to access health products as it is the right to housing, clean environment, or our right to assemble and associate. It is critical then to have a conversation about the nexus between the different forums. We will explore these questions. Why should Human Rights Council care about global health architecture? Should health, human rights, and economic experts coordinate? What connects them? Why should we listen to communities and civil societies working at the global economic forums? What is the role of state and civil society? How do we think about the political economy of health and human rights? And we have some wonderful panelists who will be speaking to this. I'm very excited about that. And I'm going to introduce them. We're going to have an interactive panel with two sets of questions, which I will ask, and then we'll hopefully open for a couple of questions with the audience, both online and in person. We do have an online audience who's watching. Hopefully they can hear us clearly. Let me start with our first speaker, thank you, who is to my left, got my left right. Mohamadieh is a senior researcher and legal advisor with the Third World Network office in Geneva. She's 10 years of work experience in Geneva, where she's focused on WTO processes and negotiations, international investment, governance, and legal accountability for business enterprises. Previously, she worked in the Arab region on economic and social policies and rights. In the first question, in your experience, what is the nexus between the human rights framework and institutions and your work at other multilateral bodies, in particular with respect to trade and investment treaties? Is there a role for the human rights community there? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks a lot for the invitation. So, as I said, my work focuses primarily on following negotiations on trade and investment issues, and my day-to-day is following the WTO negotiations. And the nexus, I'm not sure about the next. We can jump into talking about the nexus. I think we need to realize that in terms of the legal regimes, they are very much parallel legal regimes. If we're talking about the human rights legal regime and the trade and investment, whether it's the WTO or the bilateral agreements. And besides the legal regimes being parallel, as you were hinting, the communities behind these legal regimes are very much working in parallel. Definitely, if you look at government, you can see that the people responsible or the officials responsible for policy and trade negotiations and in the area of investment as well are often not talking to their colleagues who are responsible for rights-related issues, including in executive branches and ministries responsible for health policy, for example, education policy, etc. But also, if you look, we often have parallel sets of languages that we utilize. So, and this is this is very evident when we organize meetings for even experts and civil society colleagues and think tanks concerned with these two areas. So there's a lot of work to be done, not only with governments, but also among ourselves, I think. But to talk more of the interactions of these legal regimes and how they reflect in practice, we, from where we sit, when we follow the interaction of trade, investment, and human rights, we see that there are multiple instances of tension, a kind of collision between these regimes, which have direct implications at the national level and for different communities. And you can think of different examples. One where trade rules would impede the ability of states to intervene in order to service the fulfillment of a certain right. The most flagrant and recent example was with the COVID situation, where we had basically close to 2 years of negotiations in order to deal with the restrictions arising from the intellectual property rights or intellectual property regime on the issues pertaining to access to vaccines, and now still ongoing, the issues pertaining to access to therapeutics and diagnostics. And those are intrinsically connected with the right to health and the right to life, etc. But there are other as well instances that you can see clearly now when it comes to the response to the climate crisis, to the response to the food security crisis. You have several sets of rules at the WTO, whether under the Agreement on Agriculture or the rules pertaining to subsidies as a tool for intervention by states in order to support, for example, their farmers for food security purposes, and definitely under the intellectual property rules of the TRIPS agreement. So this is one interaction. You can look as well as other examples from the investment regime. You know, the investment regime is basically rooted in these thousands of bilateral investment protection agreements, which give privileges and protections to foreign investors and allow them to sue the state directly whenever they consider that their expected profits are being hindered by an intervention by their host state. And then you can see that these sets of rules directly impede the ability of governments to take actions, for example, for climate-related transformations or in other areas, because they are often chilled by the potential for a $1 million or $1 billion case that they could be struck by through investor-state dispute settlement. But also on top of that, you can see that the rights of communities impacted by foreign investment could be impacted in multiple ways, because if a foreign investor violates rights of local communities and the state wants to intervene, the state can be threatened by a case. But if there's a case where it deals with issues that impact the rights of these communities, the communities don't have a standing in front of these investment tribunals, even if their rights are being influenced. So you have an issue of due process even and fairness, because whole communities and individuals which are affected do not have a legal standing. So these are just some examples, and keep me on time.
Yes.
So, but saying that, we also need to acknowledge that the issues of coherence between these legal regimes is not something new. It has been addressed for years and decades. And I think there has been a lot of work under the human rights, or let me say in the human rights community, and you can contest me if there's a community or not, but like to give you a few examples. For example, the Committee on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights have addressed this issue multiple times, and in its general comments have spoken on the importance that states in their negotiations and conclusions of trade and investment agreements address the human rights issue. Special rapporteurs from the right to food to the right to health, you can look at their work on this issue. The UN guiding principles, when they spoke about business and human rights, they also maintain that the states needs to consider and address human rights issues that arise when they conclude agreements in the benefit of business, etc. So you can see there's a lot of reflection in the human rights communities for solutions in order to enhance the coherence between these two legal regimes. But I'm not sure that we've done much in terms of reflecting those in practice through the negotiations, the design of the agreements, and also the design into the agreements of mechanisms to allow us to maintain this coherence. So trade and investment agreements often do not have any mechanism for review of these agreements based on their impacts. So one of the main demands when human rights, civil society groups were dealing with this issue is that we need to build in these agreements rules which allows governments to look back at the implications after 5 or 10 years and withdraw, terminate, or review these agreements based on their implications on the human rights conditions and the ability of governments to fulfill their human rights obligations.
Thank you very much for that, and also for sticking on time. And I think the question you pose, is there a human rights community, might be something that a lot of people here might have a lot to say and discuss. But also moving from that to another set of negotiations, which our next speaker will speak about, to my immediate right. It is, let me introduce Preeti Patnaik, who's the founding editor of the Geneva Health Files, a weekly investigative newsletter that tracks power and politics in global health. In her 20 years in journalism, she's reported on global health, international trade, finance, and illicit financial flows. She's worked as a reporter in Geneva, New York City, and New Delhi. And outside of journalism, she's worked at one public health agency. It is a fantastic publication. Don't already subscribe to it. Question to Preeti. You have been monitoring the negotiations, particularly on health, and how the negotiations on TRIPS have evolved. What has been the impact of it, including on the international processes, such as the negotiations for the pandemic treaty or the pandemic accord? Over to you, Preeti.
Thanks so much for the invitation and for the kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here. I think it's very important to look at these issues in an interdisciplinary fashion. My initial disclaimer is I speak as a journalist, so a lot of what I'll say is based on what we've reported on what we have gleaned from negotiators and so on. I do think that the discussions around the TRIPS waiver of the WTO has been an inflection point in the access to medicines debate. For better or worse will depend on where you stand on these issues. There are a couple of ways to look at this. Let's begin with the facts on the ground. We know that what was adopted by countries in June 2022 at the WTO ministerial was essentially a set of clarifications on existing rules, barely a shadow of what was originally proposed by India and South Africa in October 2020. And we have not seen the impact of that decision in countries yet. This also raises questions on the preparedness and readiness at the national levels in general to deal with these questions. However, it would be wrong to look at the waiver discussions in such clinical terms. It can be argued that the process has been more important than the outcome itself. It is that 2-year process where developing countries, put up a fight in the face of fairly strong political and commercial factors. That really became the story and has set the stage for ongoing and potentially future discussions. To be sure, while developing countries failed in their efforts, I do think that the process of the WTO has changed our expectations on how such policies are debated, and it has made space for the difficult conversations. It has altered the dynamics between companies and governments. We saw how pressured the industry has felt, to dismiss the TRIPS waiver, the COVID-19 technology access pool, among other initiatives. And it has also, shed light on the way WHO articulates these issues while challenging the industry in the context of the TRIPS waiver. And this could, potentially go beyond the pandemic itself, and we could talk about other diseases in the same manner. I do think that it has permanently shifted the goalposts of the debate. We saw the EU pushing for compulsory licensing, and which was unthinkable pre-pandemic, right? So my own understanding is that countries are now reaping the benefits of this 2-year process at the WHO. I'm not saying that countries will have a lot of agency in talking about IP and health issues immediately, but I do think the space has expanded from before. So there's a little bit of momentum left. The wounds are fresh and some sort of a betrayal of a promise. And I think that keeps developing countries going. Having said that, it's hard to say at this point whether there will be light at the end of the tunnel because the power structures still remain in place. But the process itself can sometimes go further than what we expect right now. So I would say it's very much open at this point. As far as the pandemic accord is concerned, the zero draft, the current version, which is now being discussed, there are of course provisions on equity, IP, tech transfer, and so on. Some say that the language is weak, doesn't speak concretely as far as legal obligations on these issues are concerned, and some say it goes too far that we cannot talk about the waiver here. And as before, many developed countries have brought it up already in the discussions that you cannot look at IP issues in the WHO or at the HRC for that matter, but countries have not been able to do anything substantial, even at the WTO, the gatekeepers of these rules. There are also parallels in these two negotiations. The waiver discussion really galvanized epistemic communities, as one trade negotiator told us, right? Nurses and students, Nobel laureates, global leaders, humanitarian organizations. And that's exactly what we see in the current discussions in the pandemic accord. You have a whole host of stakeholders who are interested, a really broad representation: wildlife experts, scientists, financiers, child rights activists. Are you going to tell them that these issues cannot be discussed here? Who's to decide what's the right forum? So what we are witnessing is an artificial distinction in policy making, and we have to sort of acknowledge that. And the point of the event today is, of course, that you want to talk about the right to life, which embodies the right to health, and that embodies the right to access to medicines, essential medicines. And if you look back at the early days of the TRIPS waiver discussions, there was a clear link that was made between access to technology and how that relates to the right to development. I think this was really front and center in some of the sort of arguments made by the proponents. Also remember that ultimately what was agreed at the WTO, a lot of people were unhappy with it. The CSOs, the industry, and countries. So that really goes to show how important the process was. The failure of the TRIPS talks at the WTO has been a gut punch, as one activist said, but countries have dusted themselves off and they've begun afresh at the WHO. But it's not a numbers game. It's not about how many died or how many countries may favor these provisions. Ultimately, it'll be about how power is deployed while arriving at an outcome of these discussions. And of course, the TRIPS waiver discussions have also alerted developed countries on what could be done to avert similar discussions of the WHO. So this is very much an ongoing discussion. These are early days yet. So finally, on human rights and IP, the impact of the WTO discussions have been felt in this house as well. There have been a number of references made over the last 3 years linking IP to human rights. And it has been pointed out that more than 90%, nearly 90% of WTO members are also signatories to, the international covenants. So while respecting IP rights, they will also have to take into account the right to health and the right to development. I guess I'll stop here. So in short, I think the TRIPS waiver discussions has had a ripple effect in other fora.
Thank you very much, Preeti, for that actually succinct analysis. And I know there's a lot to unpack there. And I think we will talk about, the question of the gut punch to the activist community and the impact from a slightly different perspective with our next speaker to the far right, Alan Rossi Silva, who is the coordinator of international affairs at the Working Group on Intellectual Property for the Brazilian Network for the Integration of Peoples, and a PhD candidate in law at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. Alan, what the two-part question, what has been the national impact of the discussions on developments on IP and health, and also what has been, from your experience in the work of the organization, the role and relationship between big pharma and states in relation to IP and health, because we do talk quite a bit about IP and health throughout the time. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Well,
I think you need to go right. Yeah.
yeah, no? Yeah. Well, thanks for the invitation, Pooja, and the opportunity to speak about this very, very important topic. First, regarding the relationship between big pharma and states, I would say that it depends. First, when we are looking into the relationship between developed countries, the so-called developed countries, and big pharma, we can see clearly a relationship of symbiosis between these two actors. However, when we see the relationship between the global South countries with big pharma, we see a very different picture, where there is a relationship of complete subservience to the interests of big pharma. And there is one thing in common between global South and global North when we are talking about the relationship with big pharma. That is that both are selling out the interests of their people to the interests of big pharma in these negotiations. And I think that it needs to be very clear. And some of you may think that's too radical or it's too short-sighted, but we do acknowledge that there is a process of trying to soften this debate, where a new language has been created to change the perspective about this important issue. What is, in fact, fear or convenience have been translated into diplomatic language as strategy or pragmatism. So this is one thing that, from our perspective, needs to be very clear. And it does not stop there. When you think about other terms, for example, we consider that subservience is too harsh, and then we consider that these countries are autonomous to negotiate. Imposition becomes negotiation. And possible, impossible, what is viable, what's not viable. And in the end, what's being discussed is what's acceptable and what's too radical to be discussed in these forums. So that's why it's important to make another distinction when you're talking about the relationship between states and big pharma. There is the distinction between states and their people. It needs to be very clear because, of course, they are selling out their interests either in the global South or in the global North, and people are always resisting. It needs to be very clear. Even when we are drowned in big pharma propaganda, we are always resisting because we are always fighting for our lives and for those who we love. So it needs to be very clear that our states do not represent us in these multilateral forums always. And going to the second part of your, I hope I have time, of your question, trying to be really straightforward in a very complex scenario. What are the impacts of this dynamic I just described? To put it simply, the IP structures imposed, not negotiated, imposed by the global North, resulting in unnecessary suffering and an unthinkable amount of deaths worldwide, not just in the global South, but worldwide. And it needs to be clear, this is the impact. And this is a human rights issue. This is an urgent human rights issue. It needs to be clear. And I just would like to finish with this question, this answer with an example. Of course, I could talk about COVID-19. Of course, I could talk about several cases that you can imagine that we are not short of examples in this discussion. However, I would like to share with you very briefly the case of Trikafta. That is a specific medicine that is being in the discussions nowadays. And we in Brazil are fully involved in a global campaign led by cystic fibrosis patients fighting for access to this medicine. And how can I in 2 minutes summarize this? There is no other way to say it. Vertex, the manufacturing company, is putting a knife to our throats in Brazil and all over the world. Because just some numbers. They are proposing or they are imposing a price that's more than $150,000. It means more than almost 900,000 reais, Brazilian reais. And they are saying basically, either you incorporate this to your public health system and compromise, or you are going to see your patients die. And you say, oh, but this is a global South thing. No, in the United States, the price list of these medicines is more than $300,000 dollars. So this is an absurd. And then you, some of you may be thinking, of course, but it must be a very expensive medicine to produce. We have estimated costs of this medicine and of production of this medicine, and we can see that's something around $5,000. That's the number. And you think, no, it couldn't be worse. And I have more seconds here. I will try to finish with this. Vertex, the manufacturing company, has already reported more than $17 billion, 17 billions with the B dollars of sales with this medicine since 2019 when it was first registered. This is what we are talking about. And then now I'm talking about it now. In Argentina, we could buy the generic version of the same medicine for $18,000. And why we can't buy this medicine from Argentina? In Brazil, it's a very near country, as you can imagine, because of the IP system. That's, do we want to impact more clear than that? We have to pay more than $150 per patient per year instead of paying $18,000 in Argentina because of the IP system. This is a very clear impact for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan, for the explanation and the example, and also making it clear why we need to talk about this, why there needs to be more discussion around these issues and what it is for people. I do have a second round of questions. If you have questions online or in person, please do feel free to raise your hand. We could pause a break, or we can go through the next round. We're happy to continue, and it's also a request to the speakers, in case you do want to comment upon or something one of the other speakers said, please feel free to do so in the second round. My apologies, I know the time is short, I'll keep saying that, but I'm happy we're having the conversation. And we will switch the order around for the next question, which is similar to all of our speakers, with slight changes around, is there a role for human rights community, given we are still debating if it exists here in the Human Rights Council. This includes the states, the NGOs, the UN agencies in global health decisions, discussions. Is there a role, essentially what we're saying, is there a role for human rights in this, and what might that be? And we'll start with Alan, considering you also spoke about the impact around what have been the focus and strategies used by the social movements, so that we could also be informed by the work that's happening by the movements, which is the purpose. So thank you.
Thank you again, Pooja. Well, I'll be a little bit rebellious here, and I will take a step back in the discussion, because I think before we start discussing our role, before we start discussing our strategies, we should be asking ourselves more often, what's that we want? Because the strategy is how we are going to achieve this thing that we want. But okay, before that, what is it? Is it clear for us what we want? This is the first question I'd like to share with you. And then I think that it should be clear that we need to be very precise about the idea of how far our imagination goes. It seems to be very, very, very abstract, but it's not. I assure you, it's not. How far we can see, what's our vision? And then I ask you, as far as our funders allow us, is that far? We are going to struggle for voluntary licenses, compulsory licenses, the exclusion of essential goods of IP scope. Or are we going to be radicals and fight for the end of the TRIPS agreement? This is the question. Or something else. Have we a positive agenda in this case, in a situation that we can, okay, now we have this vision, how can we achieve it? And then we can discuss strategy. This is my perspective. And then when we are going to discuss strategy, delivering what Pooja asked me, I think that we should ask ourselves about our current strategies. For example, is it with short-term goals that we are going to achieve it? Because states and transnational corporations, they have empire strategies. They have they think 50 years, 60 years, 100 years ahead. And we are thinking sometimes 4 years ahead, a period of a project. So this is a question that we should be posing to ourselves. Are we going to complain about big pharma's power? It's a given data. So we have to, it's given data. We have to think ahead as a premise. And what about raising awareness? Because we lose in the TRIPS waiver, we lose in the WTO, we lose everywhere, and you say, oh, at least we are raising awareness. Is it what we are here for? Is it a suitable strategy to our goals? But what are our goals again? And that being said, I would like to just share a few thoughts on multilateral forums. First, I'll state the obvious. It's an extremely important component of our strategy, extremely important. And after the TRIPS waiver, everyone started debating, oh, should we go back to the national level? No, I don't believe so. I think we should focus on the multilateral forums. But we cannot overlook the diagnosis, the correct diagnosis. That is, they need to be radically changed. It's a fact, it's obvious. I'm a little bit naive saying that here, I know that, but it needs to be said. They are crucial part of big pharma's strategy now. They are serving to the interests of this northern coalition between developed countries and transnational corporations. We know that, everyone here knows that. And how does it happen? First, they are drawing us into endless negotiations. They are diluting our power that comes from people, from territory. They are controlling our pace, the pace of our fight. They are distracting us with loads of non-binding declarations and resolutions. And they are protecting, with all this, they are protecting the status quo. The same multilateral institutions that we are talking about. And then we have to build together the prognosis. This is diagnosis. But I want to end here with a positive note, at least. And I think that's a collective agenda. It's not for me to say, it's not for my organization to say, it's for us to start having spaces like this to discuss together. But stemming from all these premises, we should, okay, how can we operate from now on? This is a question. And of course, I will not, as I said, I would be it would be contradictory of my part saying, giving a recipe here, but I do like to share some premises for this debate to come. First, it's a human rights issue, obvious, but I'm saying it again. It's a human rights issue. The IP system, the World Trade Organization, has not failed. They are not failing. They are working as they were supposed to be working. Oh, but this is obvious, but it seems that's not that clear for us. We are still expecting that WTO will deliver a TRIPS waiver. Who can say that was disappointed? I think it's a mistake in our diagnosis. Third, intellectual property is killing people now. There is no other diplomatic word for that. They are killing people right now around the world, in the global south and in the global north. And it's urgent. Fourth, patents are an arbitrary public policy because they are not real public and they are terrible policy. And it's not, what's important here is it's not a hermetic technical issue. It's all about politics. And we need to take over this debate from the civil society perspective. I swear that I'm almost finishing. Fifth, we are having this debate for centuries. I swear to you, if you take, I'm not exaggerating, if you take texts from the 19th century and before, you see the same debates about IP. I swear to you. I swear to you. And lastly, finally, it's the most important thing that I would like to share with you here today. Now I get your attention. This system has not always been here. It's really new. And will not, believe me, will not last forever. We need to fight fiercely against this illusion of perpetuity. And with these premises in mind, I think that we are ready to start discussing what we want and what's our strategy, common strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan, for those comments. And I think you it was a provocation both for all of us and for everybody watching to think this through. And I'm hoping it'll also add to possibly some of the next questions around, and I move to Preeti, if you can, what is the role? And if you can focus on the opportunities, including the pandemic treaty negotiations, and possibly if we can incorporate some of what Alan expects us to do in the process, it'll be useful to hear. Thanks, Preeti.
Thanks a lot. Following a passionate activist is always difficult, but I will try and probably disappoint. The role for the human rights community, to begin with, I think global health concerns everybody, so everybody has a role to play. There are two aspects specifically as far as the human rights community's role in global health negotiations are concerned. And by global health negotiations, I mean not just the pandemic accord, but also the international health regulations that are currently being amended. So one is whether what kind of a role should human rights entities have, and whether it can be expanded. A couple of sort of delicate issues at stake. We know that the pandemic was an opportunity for autocratic governments to trample many segments of the society, from migrants to scientists, and so the emphasis on the language that has been suggested so far at WHO has a lot rightfully been around non-discrimination matters. So in the zero draft of the pandemic accord, human rights have been articulated as a broad theme that actually encompasses a range of stakeholders. It appears less than half a dozen times in the current draft of the pandemic accord. Article 14 talks about protection of human rights in somewhat general terms, I would say. There are also suggestions in the amendments to the IHR on changing the way human rights is now articulated in the IHR, in the scope, purpose, and principles. This is available, and you can have a look at which countries suggested what language as far as this is concerned. So the focus is rightfully on vulnerable populations, minorities, migrants, women, and children. But there are also, people have also talked about human rights in the context of privacy, implications for data security, and so on. One Health is another area. The discussion has been, how do we work across sectors, and why are we talking about it only from a human health point of view? What about communities at the interface of zoonotic spillovers? What about their markets, their livelihoods, and that kind of a thing? So the inclusion of human rights in current global health negotiations have different implications for different communities. Coming back to the TRIPS waiver discussions, during that period, some scholars have called for a decolonial framing of human rights in global health to address the systemic and structural issues. And by this, they basically mean reparative redistribution of resources for global solidarity, shifting vaccine access from charity to binding legal obligations, increasing manufacturing capacity in the global south, and so on. So the question is, if we are going to expand how human rights has been so far articulated in the global health negotiations, can access to medicines during a health emergency be articulated as a human right? But the moment you say this, you get into troubled waters, because that means ensuring local and regional production, and you're linking access to technology to the right to development and so on. Will there be willingness to talk about it? Countries advocating for human rights might be less enthusiastic with this kind of a framing. But again, it remains to be seen. If you look at environmental issues at the WTO, it will give you a flavor of how complicated this can become. Disputes around localization requirements and so on. This is at the heart of the climate discussions. Who pays how much or why not? Who cuts down emissions and why not? And another challenge, I think, for human rights experts is, we are now talking about common but differentiated responsibilities in global health. This has become a sort of a flashpoint already in these early stages. For example, the US has highlighted, how will this sit in with the universal applicability of the IHR? Can we talk about CBDR in the same breath? So these are some of the issues that are already on the table, as it were. I think the moot point is for global health is, if you're going to prioritize IP rights, how will this sit in with prevailing international human rights law that protects and enshrines right to health and equal benefit from scientific progress and so on? Finally, I think here at the TRIPS Council, there have been calls for restating the human rights responsibilities of pharmaceutical companies. And international cooperation is a legal obligation in the International Covenant for Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. And it emphasizes international assistance. And one of the proposals, for the amendments to the IHR actually talks about a duty to cooperate. So there are these, windows that potentially, I think, where the human rights community can make an intervention in ongoing discussions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Preeti. Thank you so much, Preeti, for those, and it actually helps to frame it, because often we hear, even within human rights, we hear about the pandemic treaty and the human rights, but we kind of know where. Often we don't really know nearly as much. So thank you so much for framing that discussion. And in the same way, I think moving towards what is the role of the human rights community, I'll move to my left, particularly with the focus on trade, investment, and climate negotiations, partly because we have been hearing about where human rights fit in, but you also touched upon the fact that often states can't even, the dispute resolution is difficult. There is mechanisms where we put human rights, but when you come to trade and investment treaties, there's almost no space. So from your work, what is the role of the community, states, NGOs, UN agencies around this? Thank you.
Thanks, Pooja. Just to reflect a bit first on, these are battles, right? And you've spoken a lot, Ellen, on this, and the battles are very different depending on the forum. So it's not a homogeneous territory, meaning the nexus or the issues pertaining to where these two regimes meet and how they meet. It's very much the nature of the battle depends on the forum, whether if you're here and discussing these issues, it's a very different situation than if you're discussing it in the WTO, or if you're discussing it, for example, in the UN Commission on International Trade Law, which is dealing with the reform of investment and investor-state dispute settlement. So, and the solutions can be very different as well. And all these communities are looking at solutions of coherence. There's a big challenge now of being nuanced enough in order to be able to maneuver these different forums and make sure that the solutions of the coherence between these systems are not, completely not aligned. But there's a very fine balance that we're talking about here now. It's not just bringing the human rights language in the economic agreements, right? Because even if we bring the human rights language in the economic agreements, there could be negative implications on the countries and their ability to fulfill human rights. I give you an example. You asked for climate. Climate and trade is the biggest issue in Geneva now. it's not anymore, the waiver, sorry to tell you, right? It is the biggest issue being addressed in the WTO. And the WTO as an institution and also as member states want to find trade solutions for the climate challenge. The problem is the crucial thing that we need to do here is to review the existing rules and see how the existing rules hinder the state's response to climate and try to find more policy space for states to intervene irrespective of the IP rules, irrespective of the rules on subsidies. So we need to find these flexibilities under the existing rules. This is what we need. But most of the member states now of the WTO don't want to review the existing rules. They don't want to look at whether they work or not. They just want to add on the existing rules. And when we start adding on the existing rules, interventions in the name of climate, in the name of human rights, without addressing the constraints emerging from the existing rules, we can fall into a very also dangerous trap, because in the name of human rights and climate, we have certain countries now taking action in their trade policy that would severely hinder the ability of other countries to fulfill human rights and the climate response. You have huge discussions at the WTO on the border adjustment measures that the European Union is taking in order to attend to the carbon implications of products, where they want to put tariffs on products depending on how they were produced and the carbon implications on that production. This is one of the biggest battles now at the WTO, because this is basically, putting the burden on less endowed countries and countries that have witnessed the shift of polluting production from the north to the south through global value chains over decades, through the decisions of multinational companies of the north that are not regulated by the north, so they can do whatever they want in the south, pollute, and then, the non-polluting results are the privilege of the north. So the core problem is regulating the actions of multinationals so that they would not do outside their home jurisdictions what they are not allowed to do in their home jurisdiction. They would not do in the south what they are not allowed to do in the north. So I'm talking about the delicate balance because when we deal with labor rights, environmental rights, human rights in general, and economic agreements, we really need to make sure that the solutions we are proposing are not going to backfire on the developing countries and the least developed countries in terms of either restraining their policy space to intervene in order or making them carry the burden and the brunt of the challenge, the global challenge that we are facing. And the problem, if we're looking at the WTO, it's an institution, as you were also noting, it's an institution that was built around the issue of facilitating or the expansion of trade based on competitive advantage. It was not built in order to facilitate anything else, right? So now they are having a problem in order to find a way in order to address or find solutions for the global collective challenge, because the collective challenge was never in the sight of the WTO. It's more about, competitive advantage among countries. And this is one of their biggest problems, because sometimes false solutions are being proposed at the WTO in the name of the response to climate and in the name of the response to human rights. And this is where the dialogue is very important, because the human rights community needs to unveil these false solutions and unveil them in time, so that as well, and here, in the end, who unveils? It's our governmental representatives in the WTO. So we need to start the conversation at the national level so that our representatives in the WTO as well are able to assess the implications of the solutions they are designing at the WTO from a human rights perspective. And they are being questioned nationally as well from their human rights counterpart or health counterpart or environment ministry, etc., in order for these false solutions not to advance. So I'm just saying that to say that we're not in a white and black, territory. We're really in a very gray zone, and the battle will be very different depending on the forum. But I agree clearly with one thing that Ellen said, is there's a common challenge between all these multilateral forums, which is the notion of multi-stakeholderism, which is everywhere now. And I talk about the WTO. It's the first time we have in legal language coming out of a ministerial conference of the WTO, the notion of expanding cooperation with different stakeholders. There was nothing called different stakeholders in the WTO before. There's member states, and there are other relevant international organizations. And the problem, I think, with multi-stakeholderism for us as public interest civil society groups is that it is putting the voice of public interest organizations, including human rights organizations, on par with organized corporate lobbies. We are seen as the same. We're seen as stakeholders. And I think this is a big collective battle we have across different forums. And I think we need to work across forums because the solution, I think, should be similar across the different ones.
Firstly, I do want to say thank you very much for that. And how many of you just want to continue having these discussions, which is something that I would love to have with all of our speakers. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. I don't know if anybody in the room has a question. We have 5 minutes, actually 4 minutes, because we need to clear for the next speaker. So in case you do, I have a question online, which I'm going to read out. And I can ask the speakers to go through a last minute points for us. I think you're ending around keeping this conversation going is fantastic. If you could just introduce yourself and be as short as possible. Sorry.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Kokla, and I'm from Singapore, from abolitionist group. So my question, I guess, is a bit more philosophical, but I think it does inform strategies. Right? So it's whether you think and whether there is room to discuss whether human rights are compatible at all with capitalism, and whether a commitment to human rights then commits us, if we're to be honest, to an anti-capitalist stance, and how that then informs our strategies and engagements. Because I think sometimes the analysis feels very piecemeal, and whether and human rights too, I think you're talking about how certain things are quite recent. Human rights too is a very recent language, and previously it was working class struggle, right? So and it's human rights also as a language diluting working class struggle. And to speak to what Ellen was talking about and limiting our imaginations, right? Where we keep focusing on the possibilities of human rights within the political economy we have, rather than the possibilities of transforming this political economy into a different one. So curious to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think we have a very similar question, literally almost saying, but from a different person. So, and I'm not making this up. You can check the Zoom for this. So I'm just not going to read that out because it's on a similar line, and just maybe, I'm very sorry, a minute if you have any thoughts. And do understand it's a big question. So whatever thoughts you have, and maybe we can start from you and then go in that line. Just a minute. My apologies for the short time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an issue of framing, like the battle, whether it's an anti-capitalism battle or if it's a battle for alternative within the capitalist model, you can take your position, but in the end, to fight the fight, you need to go to the micro level. And this is why, framing it as an anti-capitalist battle could be useful, but then we need to understand the entry points for our battle, right? Because in the end, it really boils down to understanding the rules that are basically obligating all of us, from our governments to also implicating our human rights, understanding the rules and understanding how these rules are enforced or not enforced, right? And understanding the forum that oversees these rules and framing your battle there. Because otherwise, we're going to be working only outside the system. And I think if we really are going to change, we need to couple working outside the system with working inside the system. This is why, and these conversations are very hard, because civil society organizations who work with outside strategies have different languages and different ways of seeing things than civil society organizations that work with inside strategies, meaning inside institutions, on the rules, on the negotiations. But we as CWN, we see that one is part of the other, and we cannot achieve our objectives without collaboration and also co-development of the inside-outside strategy.
We have very short time, so yeah.
Just quickly, more reacting to what was said earlier, the pandemic was an opportunity to arrive at a solution for a global public good, and the WTO failed because they did not want to discard the rule book. So we have to keep it in mind. That was one of the justifications, that we cannot discard the rule book, and therefore we cannot temporarily suspend provisions of the TRIPS agreement. Secondly, on Alan's point, I think a lot of countries believe that you need to work both at national and international levels, in this whole access to medicines fight, and not just focus on the national level. There is recognition. And yes, the problem, I think, is a lot of our current actors are embedded in the system, and that makes it difficult to change things.
Real quick. So I think it's a fundamental question. I'd like to discuss it further. And just to summarize, I would say that lack of imagination, as I said, and you reaffirmed, has been framed as pragmatism. That's it. And it's impossible to discuss IP rights, access to medicines, and the fight against transnational corporations without fighting very clearly and openly against capitalism. It's impossible. And I think that we are lacking imagination in calling it like a strategy.
Thank you very much for our wonderful speakers. Thank you all for being here. A quick note of, we have interpretation online, so thank you to all the interpreters, and a lot of work has gone for tech within the SRI team, so thank you all for everybody. We need to wrap up for the next side event, but we hope to keep the conversation going. So thanks very much to our speakers.